They say prison either breaks a man or builds him into something the world never saw coming. But in the case of Marcus Reed, it did both. He walked into his cell a 24-year-old hustler, angry, reckless, drowning in debt. He walked out 7 years later, a businessman who'd go on to build a company worth over $10 million. But the story of how he did it isn't one of luck or second chances. It's a story of blood, betrayal, and the kind of darkness most men never return from. Because before Marcus learned how to run a business, he had to survive the business of survival itself. Marcus Reed grew up on the south side of Chicago. No father, a mother who worked double shifts, and a neighborhood where fast money was the only language that got respect. By 16, Marcus had built his own kind of empire, flipping stolen electronics, running dice games behind the liquor store, and, eventually, dealing in something far more profitable. The police knew his name, so did half the city. And by the time he hit 24, Marcus wasn't just hustling. He was running a small crew that handled everything from credit card fraud to stolen cars. But every empire built too fast eventually burns itself down. In 2010, a deal went wrong. One of his closest friends, Deshaun, secretly made a side deal with a rival crew. That night, Marcus's car was ambushed. Bullets tore through the windshield, and one of his boys, Rico, never made it out. Marcus survived, but the cops found him at the scene, bleeding, armed, and surrounded by cash and counterfeit bills. He was sentenced to 15 years in Ironvale Correctional Facility, one of the toughest prisons in Illinois. Ironvale wasn't a place for rehabilitation. It was a factory, producing monsters and broken men. Inside, Marcus quickly learned that power worked the same way it did on the streets, through fear and resources. You didn't survive by fighting. You survived by controlling the flow of cigarettes, food, and information. Within months, Marcus built a system. He started trading favors, running chess tournaments for commissary snacks, and quietly taking IOUs from men who couldn't pay their debts. He was rebuilding his street empire inside the walls. But Ironvale had its own kind of politics. And in there, you don't grow without attracting attention. The guards noticed his growing influence. So did the gangs. And when one of the Aryan Brotherhood's lieutenants refused to pay Marcus what he owed, Marcus made a mistake. He handled it his old way. A fight broke out in the yard. 2 men went to the hospital. Marcus was thrown into solitary confinement for 60 days. They say solitary breaks a man. But for Marcus, it was the first time in his life he actually listened. The silence was unbearable at first. No sound, no light, just him and his thoughts. He started replaying his entire life like a movie. Every lie, every scam, every time he thought he was winning. Somewhere in that darkness, something clicked. He realized that the streets hadn't made him powerful. They'd made him a slave. He wasn't running a business. He was the product. And he swore, right there in that concrete box, that when he got out, he would never live by another man's rules again. He didn't know it yet, but that moment was the start of his million-dollar idea. When Marcus got out of solitary, everything had changed. The guards didn't trust him. The gangs avoided him. And for the first time, he wasn't trying to be feared. He was watching. He spent every free moment in the prison library, reading everything he could about business, psychology, and marketing. He discovered a book called The 48 Laws of Power, then Think and Grow Rich, and finally, The Lean Startup. Each book hit him differently. The first reminded him of how the streets worked. The second taught him why his old mindset was poison. And the third showed him how ideas could make money without blood. That's when Marcus started something small, a service for inmates who couldn't read or write well. He helped them write letters to their families, file requests to the courts, and even draft appeals. He charged them in food, favors, or protection. But more than anything, he was learning how to solve real problems and get paid for it. By the time he was 30, he was running what inmates called Reed's office, a one-man consulting business behind bars. And word got out. But success, even behind bars, always paints a target. One afternoon, Marcus's old friend Deshaun was transferred to Ironvale, the same man who betrayed him years before. Marcus hadn't seen him since the ambush. He'd assumed Deshaun was dead. Deshaun came with a smile and a handshake. He said he changed, that he wanted to make peace. For months, the two started talking again. Deshaun even helped Marcus expand Reed's office, getting more inmates involved, copying letters, delivering notes. But Marcus didn't know Deshaun was still the same snake he'd always been. Deshaun had struck a deal with the prison's dirty guards, turned Marcus in for running an unauthorized business, in exchange for early parole. One morning, guards stormed Marcus's cell. They found letters, IOU notes, and a notebook full of names. Everything he'd built, gone overnight. He was written up for illegal enterprise and sent back to solitary. But this time, something was different. He wasn't angry. He was focused. Because while the guards thought they destroyed his empire, they'd actually helped him perfect it. Inside solitary, Marcus started writing again, not letters this time, but plans. He mapped out every system he'd built in prison: supply chains, labor management, problem solving. Then he turned those same ideas into a real-world concept, a startup that could help former inmates learn entrepreneurship, using the same mindset he'd developed behind bars. He called it Second Chance Systems. The idea was simple: turn survival instincts into business skills. He wrote the entire framework by hand, 600 pages worth, and mailed it to his cousin, who was studying business at the University of Illinois. His cousin showed it to one of his professors, a venture capitalist named Robert Lyle. Lyle was impressed. He'd never seen such a raw, street-level approach to leadership and strategy. For the first time in his life, Marcus wasn't seen as a criminal, but as a thinker. And that changed everything. Marcus was released on parole in 2017, after serving 7 years. He had nothing, no money, no job, no reputation. Just a notebook full of prison notes, and a head full of business ideas. He got a job washing dishes at a diner, but spent every night building his vision. He reconnected with Robert Lyle, who offered him mentorship, not money. For 6 months, Marcus slept in a small room above the diner, eating leftovers and saving every dollar he could. Then, with $1,200 and an old laptop, he launched Second Chance Systems, LLC, a consulting agency that trained ex-convicts in digital entrepreneurship and logistics. Within the first year, his company helped 12 former inmates start small online businesses, from cleaning services to e-commerce shops. Then came the media. CNN, Vice, even Forbes ran a headline. From prison hustler to business mentor, the man teaching inmates to think like CEOs. Within 2 years, Marcus's company crossed $1 million in revenue. By 2022, it hit 8 figures. But remember Deshaun, the man who betrayed him twice? In 2023, Marcus received a letter. No return address. Just a single line written in shaky handwriting. "I'm getting out next month. Maybe you can teach me how to start over too." Most men would have burned that letter. But Marcus didn't. He met Deshaun outside the gates the day he got released. No cameras. No guards. Just 2 men who'd seen too much of hell. Deshaun apologized, genuinely this time. He was tired, homeless, addicted. Marcus could have turned away. Instead, he hired him, not as a favor, but as a test. Today, Deshaun runs one of Second Chance Systems' outreach programs. He helps men just like him, the ones who betrayed, failed, and fell apart. Learn that redemption doesn't erase your past. It builds on it. Marcus Reed's story isn't about crime. It's about transformation. He didn't escape prison. He escaped himself. Because sometimes the hardest walls aren't made of concrete. They're built from the lies we tell ourselves about what we're capable of. And for every man still trapped inside those walls, Marcus leaves one message. You don't have to be a product of where you came from. You can be the producer of where you're going. From cell to CEO, from the bottom to the boardroom, Marcus Reed didn't just build a business. He built a new definition of freedom.